Hi everyone, Bill Duvendack here with the December 2021 monthly astrological preview video. I realize that the background looks a little bit stark, but that will be changing over the next coming month. So be watching to see what I do next. Now, for those of you that watched last month, you know that I had this handy dandy little notebook that had all of my notes for November in it. To give you an idea of what to expect for December, I needed a sheet like this, front and back. Yeah, it's going to be one of them months. It's going to be very active. And let's just jump right in because we're going to pack this video with stuff. First of all, starting off on December 1st, we have Venus conjunct Pluto in Capricorn, and they're going to be doing this dance for the bulk of the month. Venus is the lesser benefic, and of course, Pluto is the planet of deep rooted transformation and change. Capricorn is a sign of authority, it's a sign of experience. And when these two are together, it's telling us that now is the time to transform your romantic relationships. Now is the time to transform how you interact with your own creativity. Now is a time to transform how you handle money that comes your way from business and the career. Now, also on that same day, we have the moon square Saturn, and we have the sun conjunct Mercury trining Chiron. So the moon square Saturn tells us that December is going to start off with a lot of emphasis on the changes that we need to do to grow up to our next level of evolution. The sun conjunct Mercury tells us now is the time to practice communication and adaptability. And the fact that it's trining Chiron tells us that if we do so very carefully, that we will accrue a lot of healing along the way. Now, this is put against the context of Neptune stationing direct. Whenever a planet stations, things get a little funky with its energy and its correspondences. Of course, Neptune is the planet of mysticism, meditation, creativity, uh, metaphysics, and all things related to the expansion of consciousness and the development of the higher mind. So we go straight from the moon square Saturn into that Neptune direct energy. So it may feel like we know what we need to do, but we just don't know how to get started with it. Now, also on the second, we have the moon conjunct Mars in Scorpio squaring Jupiter in Aquarius. Mars in Scorpio is a little tricky because Mars is one of the ruling planets of Scorpio, and therefore it's in its own sign, so it's seen as extra powerful. Some would even say that it's too much of a good thing. And when you've got the moon conjunct it, this tells us it's going to be all about emotions for the first few days of December. It's going to be all about bringing the hidden to light. And that's going to rub things wrong when it comes to the opportunities that are present from society and the greater world at large, as is represented by Jupiter. So you may find you're too passionate when you shouldn't be, or you may find that the hidden things that come up kind of challenge where you're going with things socially and when it comes to groups. and this one being the new moon eclipse on the 3rd or the 4th, depending on where you are in the world. So you can see that these first few days of December start off with quite a punch. I hope you're ready. Now, moving on to the 5th, we've got the moon square Chiron. So you might find that wounds are triggered through your emotions or that you trigger the wounds of others. The Venus conjunct Pluto continues, and now it's sextile Neptune in Pisces, telling us that the transformation we were just talking about can now dovetail in quite nicely with your spiritual growth and your spiritual evolution. Another way to look at it is to see the spiritual side of things and how they manifest in the physical world. And a lot of times that's how things start. They start off in spirit and then they get brought down to physical form. So that's going to be a good time, especially since the eclipse will be behind us, to reevaluate what you're doing, to see the spiritual causes for everyday situations that you find yourself in. On the 6th of December, we've got the moon coming along and firing off the Venus Pluto conjunction in Capricorn. So it's a good time to take initiative. It's a good time to focus on the career. It's a good time to focus on the occupation. And it's a good time to just get emotionally invested in what you do rather than going through the motions. On the 7th, we see the moon conjunct Saturn in Aquarius, which tells us that overblown fears may be more common than normal. And I don't know about you, but I see a lot of that on social media where one little thing gets blown out of proportion into one big thing, and context is usually lost. So watch out for that, the 6th, 7th, and 8th. Now, on the 8th itself, we've got Jupiter conjunct the moon. So the moon goes from interacting with Saturn to interacting with Jupiter. It goes from being restricted to expansive. It goes from being out of distorted, out of distortion. Not really sure how to say that, but it goes from that kind of vibe with Saturn's influence to expanding your emotions, expanding your consciousness, expanding your daily life, specifically taking new innovations and factoring them in to better your quality of life. Now, on the 9th, all of that activity with the moon that has been going on since the 1st kind of quiets down for a little bit, and we get a chance to emotionally catch our breath. But what we get instead is Mercury square Neptune. So you may find that you have problems finding the right words, or you may find that in the name of adaptability, your spirituality is challenged. So you can see that we shift from an emotional perspective and an emotional emphasis into one of spirituality, but it's kind of like trying to find the right key for the lock. And keep in mind, we're only at the 9th. I mean, these are just the highlights, folks. I could have put a lot more in here because December is going to be that active. With the 10th, we've got the moon conjunct Neptune in Pisces, and that is squaring the sun Mercury conjunction. The moon conjunct Neptune can be a real tricky thing because it's kind of the idea that we want to go out there, whether it's through meditation or through hypnosis. And when the moon is conjunct Neptune, it says you might not want to come back, or you just might not come back. So tread lightly with this. The grounding agent in this dance is the sun conjunct Mercury. Now, keep in mind that the sun is in Sagittarius at this time, and Mercury is not known as being in a happy spot in Sagittarius. So, what we get here is this expansive, feel good energy of the moon conjunct Neptune, but the sun and Mercury coming along saying, no, 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 no. Don't lose yourself to that Neptunian energy. Just no, don't do it. Be honest with yourself why you're doing it. Be honest with yourself with what you want to get out of it. And know that even though you might get all the secrets of the universe, if it doesn't help you pay the bills and better your quality of life, it just really is not that good. This was a life lesson I worked through in my late 20s and early 30s. I had a fantastic meditation practice, and it introduced me to all kinds of secrets of the universe. But the way it played out was that meant I was sitting around a lot, mentally masturbating, and it wasn't bettering the quality of my life. So I started asking different questions of my guides and teachers. So when I would get those secrets of the universe brought to my mind, then the next question I would ask my guides for insight is, well, that's great and all, but how does it help me pay the bills? And if there was no answer to that kind of question, I threw out the secret of the universe. I mean, it's pretty simple. I found it once, I'll find it again. May not be this life, but who cares? So keep all this in mind on the 10th. Yes, it's a good time for consciousness expansion. Yes, it's a good time to develop your spirituality in line with your intuition, but keep it grounded. Stay on point, stay on target, and know that you might not have the right words to express what you're feeling or what you're thinking, and that's all right. Coming up following that on the 11th is the moon conjunct Chiron in Aries. So watch for emotional wounds to be triggered, especially those that have to do with a sense of self and a sense of being. Now, also on that day, Mars is at the anaretic degree of Scorpio, which means it's at the last degree of Scorpio before it moves into Sagittarius. And it is squaring Jupiter in Aquarius. So here's the thing. Whenever a planet's at the critical degree, which is the anaretic degree or the 29th degree of a sign, it's going to be more powerful. It's going to be more potent. It's going to be more of a boom in your face kind of energy. And that is definitely true with Mars. So, definitely on that day for sure, watch out for accidents. Also, on that day, make sure that your temper doesn't get the best of you. And it's a good time to wrap up any kind of business projects. Now, the trade off, or the square to Jupiter, if you will, is the fact that you might be doing all of this kind of control and self governance, and you may miss opportunities that come your way through circles of friends or through the greater society at large. So, if you play things conservatively, you'll still see the opportunities, but that might require you to back off of the Mars Scorpio side and embrace more of the expansion that goes with Jupiter. So, the trade off here, or the way to navigate it, is to find the middle ground. Find that fulcrum point where you can focus on a project but put it down and walk away if an opportunity comes your way and it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And we get a day's rest, so to speak, on the 12th. How cool is that? Now, on the 13th is when Mars moves into Sagittarius. Mars is a fire planet, which is all about action and activity and taking the initiative. And Sagittarius is a mutable fire sign. So we have a fire planet in a fire sign. So you can expect a lot more spring in your step, a lot more gusto, a lot more of the desire to travel, which is just great for the upcoming holiday season. Now, also on that, and it stays in Sagittarius until 2022. Now, also on that day, we have Mercury moving into Capricorn, telling us that it is time to watch our words. It is time to watch our communication. It is time to pay attention to the occupation and the overall career in life, whether communicating that with others or whether making minute changes that you may have been putting off for a while now. Following that on the 14th is the moon conjunct Uranus in Taurus. And, you know, Uranus has been in Taurus for a while, and it's going to stay in Taurus for a while. Uranus is the planet of the unexpected. It's the planet of individuality. It's the planet of eccentricity. And Taurus is about as much of an earth sign as you can get. It's fixed earth. So it's food, it's your body, it's your daily discipline. So when you have the moon coming along here, what this means is that if you follow your impulses too much, the unexpected might happen. And those unexpected things will have to do with your physical form, whether it's food poisoning, whether it is a plan that looks good on paper, but when you physically implement it, it just does not pan out the way you want it to. There's a lot of possibilities here to watch for on the 14th. We get another day's respite for the 15th, and the 16th, we've got the moon conjunct the north node in Gemini. Now, the north node of the moon tells us where we are going, spiritually speaking. So when the moon comes along and makes this connection with it, what this means is that on this day, the 16th, it's a good day to listen to your intuition to figure out where you're going to go, spiritually speaking, next. And sometimes that's clear, sometimes it's not. But regardless, it's probably going to take you out of your comfort zone. That's the catch about the North Node, is that it says this is where you're growing spiritually. And we look at it and recoil and say, ew, I don't know if I like that. That means it's time to act on that. The 17th, we have the moon opposing Mars. So watch out for accidents, watch out for short tempers, especially when traveling. So give yourself extra time for your daily commute. You might also be impulsive when it comes to speech and telling the truth to people. So know that just because you see something or you say something doesn't mean it's going to be received well from your intended audience. This also means there might be an impulsiveness to travel. So it would be a good day to travel, but travel safely. And ask yourself if the trip is worth it. Remember that the joy is in the journey, not the destination. So if you want to do some traveling and you're dreading the journey, but you want to get to that destination, might not be a good day to do it. You might also find that the emotions are counter to this. So you might find that your emotional state doesn't want to travel. Well, then don't. You know, the moon moves pretty quick. So that impulse is only going to be there for a day or two. Then on the 18th, we have the full moon. Isn't that nice? Right before solstice, we have the full moon. And also, we have Venus finishing its stationary retrograde period, and it retrogrades in Capricorn. So here's the thing about a Venus retrograde, and I've talked about this a lot because I'm still not sure everybody gets it. Everybody understands Mercury retrograde, but a Venus retrograde is slightly different. The Venus retrograde tells us the unresolved situations having to do with the traits of Venus may come back up to be resolved, or maybe something from your past that is very Venusian unexpectedly comes to the forefront. So, the running joke when it comes to this particular retrograde is that this is a time when one or some of your exes might come back into your life, or maybe that friend that you lost touch with years ago pops back in and the situation gets healed or resolved. Now, this is also a good time to tap into your inner wells of creativity. Venus is the planet of creativity and art and beauty. And when it's retrograde, it's a good time for us to go within and find that within ourselves. Now, all of this is happening in Capricorn. So you can expect maturation lessons. You can expect a lot of this to have to do with the workplace and the career. You may also find that you're in a position to make more enlightened or educated calls with these Venusian situations that come up. And all of this is set against the backdrop of the full moon. So guess what? It's going to be a little bit stronger. And this is right before solstice. So not only is it going to be a lot stronger, it's also going to be at an extreme. So if you handle tense situations well, or if you handle extremes well, you'll be fine. If you can't handle stress or tension well, these few days, the 16th through the 22nd or so, might be a time that's pretty damn challenging. So be ready for it. Of course, then following it up 3 days later is the solstice. And keep in mind that in the northern hemisphere, it's winter solstice, and in the southern hemisphere, it is summer solstice. Now you see what I mean about a period of extremes. You see, with the equinoxes, it's all about balance. It's the equator line shooting out into space. But with the solstices, it's either the highest point or the lowest point in the sky for the sun on its transit to the next solstice. So, what this means is now is a good time to bring yourself back into balance. If you're in the northern hemisphere, it's the shortest day of the year. If you're in the southern hemisphere, it's the longest day of the year. So plan your activities accordingly. This means it is either the beginning of summer or the beginning of winter. So work with those kind of thoughts in your daily practice. Now is the time to say, if you're in the northern hemisphere, hey, the days are going to get longer. It's the return of the sun and the sun king. And if you're in the southern hemisphere, hey, the days are going to start getting shorter, taking us to the death of the sun king, only to be reborn again at the next solstice. We skip a few days, we get a few days to catch our breath there. And the next significant aspects that we see are on the 27th, right before the end of the calendar year. And keep in mind that with December and with what we're talking about, it's the end of the calendar year, not the end of the astrological year. So while you may be ready to turn the page with regards to the calendar, just know that astrologically, there are still several months left in this cycle. Now, we have the sun square Chiron. So watch for wounds to be brought to the surface, but this is kind of specific. The way that this may play out is that as you are developing your greatest growth and good, i.e., the sun, you might get tested from the universe on your ability to apply what you have learned. Chiron. So that's the function of the wound. It's not so much to wound or to hurt, but rather it is more for you to demonstrate through application how far you are along in the healing process. So, in other words, it's a show me, don't tell me kind of time. Following that, on the 28th, we have the moon sextiling the sun. So you may find that internally your emotions are very well harmonized with your greatest growth and good. This is a good time to find union, or as it's called in Eastern traditions, samadhi, within yourself. The 29th gives us a chance to catch our breath. And then on the 30th, we have the moon square Jupiter. And Jupiter moves into its sign of Pisces. And this Pisces loves that. Every time Jupiter comes through Pisces, if you've got strong Pisces in your chart, you're probably going to have good stuff coming your way. On the higher end of the spectrum, it would be more spiritual insight and spiritual evolution. On the lower end of the spectrum, it might be too much of a good thing, and you might lose yourself to escapism if you're not careful. But it can be quite profound for developing your psychic skills, developing your spiritual side, and taking cutting edge ideas and applying them in avant garde ways. And then finally, on the 31st, New Year's Eve, guess what we got? Nah, I'm kidding. You don't have to guess. We have Mars conjunct the moon in Sagittarius. So, time to travel, or at least you'll think that's the case. But keep in mind, it's New Year's Eve, or as I have heard it called in many of my social circles, rookie night. So, with Mars conjunct the moon in Sagittarius, it's a good time to focus on your spirituality. It's a good time to focus on your long term plans and your long term investments. It's a good time to be proactive with regards to making changes to those investments or those long term plans. So, really, when you step back and look at it, what that means is that New Year's Eve is a good time to reflect on the year that we just had. And boy, what a year it was! And to begin the adjustment period for what 2022 is going to bring. So it's more of a quiet night of self reflection and introspection. Now, of course, you can travel, you can go out. Sagittarius is a sign of travel and it's a sign of optimism. Just be careful what situations you find yourself in. Because with all this fire energy, there might be some short tempers, there might be some accidents around the corner if you're not careful. So if you do go out on New Year's Eve, definitely kind of watch your ass. And whether you stay in or go out with Sagittarius, it's a good time to be honest with yourself. Take a look at yourself in the mirror. Look and say, this is what 2021 brought me. I'm flipping done with it. Now let's set the stage for 2022. This is not a good time to be in denial about anything. Rather, it's a good time to say, my plans for 2022 are this. And you don't go out and execute them. No, no, no. It's going to be a work in progress. We're talking big plans here. We're not talking whether or not you do your grocery shopping in the morning or the afternoon. We're talking about what major goals do you want to accomplish during the whole calendar year, and what months are going to be working on what facets of those plans. See what I mean? December is going to be active. Lots of moon activity, lots of chiron activity. As you would expect, lots of Sagittarius activity, and even at the point of solstice on the 21st, when the sun moves into Capricorn, there's still going to be a lot of Sag fire out there. But a little secret to that is that this happens every year, so don't let it freak you out. What makes it different this year is we've got a Venus retrograde and we've got Mars in Sagittarius. Now, the Venus retrograde is going to be going on through the early part of 2022. The general rule of thumb here is that Venus is retrograde for about 40 days. And a lot of people have theorized that these 40 days are significant because we can look at it from various spiritual traditions. And we can kind of wonder if maybe some of those stories that they tell us are connected to Venus. For example, the biblical flood, 40 days and 40 nights. The descent of Inanna or Ishtar is oftentimes said to be 40 days. So we can look at this and we can say, well, did that happen during a Venus retrograde when the first stories were coming about? Or we can look at it and say, oh, wow, this is another way to apply Venus retrograde energy. Go within, go deep, and come out a transformed person, one that is more under your guidance than it was before. And keep in mind that Venus retrograde only happens every couple of years. So it's going to be a bit before it comes back around. And I point that out because if you do have people from the past come back up, it might cause that knee-jerk reaction to think that, hey, oh crap, this is going to happen all the time like a Mercury retrograde, when in reality, no, it's not. It does not happen often. So it gives you a chance to implement what comes along and put it to work for you. Anyway, those are the highlights for the month. I will continue to do the daily horoscopes on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Monthly horoscopes will be up on the 418ascendant.com website. Those of you that are in the Cult of You, specifically the astrological group on Facebook, definitely hit us up with questions there. I'm very grateful to Adam for making all of this happen, and we are developing some things behind the scenes, as many of you may know if you've watched my temple service, and the temple services, of course, will continue. But otherwise, happy holidays. It's that time of year to be appreciative and grateful for what we've got and to share the love with others, and we should remember that love is the law. Until next month, have fun, and as that fun book movie series says, may the odds be ever in your favor.
I've always felt a little different, a little uneasy between regular folk, a bit of a dreamer, a lost cause, a little non-ordinary, some would say. I think I've always just been this way. My mother said I was special, my father thought I should be feared. But I knew that witchcraft coursed through my veins the first time I tasted the lips of the goddess inside the rain. Yes, I'm a witch, it's true. And sure, we are the ones who believe in the beauty of nature, who believe in the things science, absent of art, cannot explain, who instead of religion would have romance. And sure, you may think we have lost our way, when in the world of predictable things we have such unfamiliar things that we would like to say. But maybe, in a world so cold and alone, a little unfamiliar is exactly what is needed to show us the way home.